In this tutorial, we're going to begin doing the minor pass of detail throughout the helmet. So this is going to involve doing screw holes for the helmet as well as the screw bits themselves. In addition to this, we'll also go ahead and do some more minor inset detailing around the underside and back of the helmet. Using Control Shift and B, we're going to go ahead and bevel this vertice, and this is going to be the foundation for our screw hole insets. Once we've got this, we're going to go ahead and subdivide it, dissolve the middle vertice, and then using the circle operation from our Loop Tools add-on to create a circle out of it. We're not actually going to do an awful lot to fix up the horrible topology we have around in this area at the moment. Believe it or not, we're going to keep a majority of these horrible n-gons. Now, you're probably thinking that this is rather strange, as for the most part in this tutorial series, we have strived to try and keep really nice quad-based topology. We are going to break a couple of rules here, and we can get away with it because this is a mostly flat surface. If it's not on your end and you're seeing a whole lot of artifacts pop up, what I recommend doing is going and selecting this back row of faces here, and then scaling 0 to the Z axis on either the normal or local axes of all the selected faces, and then you will be able to get away with all these n-gons. In addition to this, we are also going to do an inset around this circular part and create a support loop, just so we don't actually get some weird shading artifacts around the base of the circle, as if we have all those n-gons connected to the very edge of this indent piece here, then we will get shading artifacts. Adding that edge loop will just alleviate that problem. So we're going to use the exact same process on these two vertices at the back here, using Control Shift and B to bevel the vertice, subdividing the vertice, and then using the circle operation from our Loop Tools add-on to create a nice circle at the back here for the screw hole indent. I just noticed a little bit of pinching in this area, so I'm just going to go ahead and adjust that. By all means, any pinching that you see on the model, just go ahead and adjust it as you see fit. You don't really need to follow along as I do it. As I mentioned in the tutorial where we actually modeled this inset piece, I said we were going to make the depth of it a little bit greater, and we were going to go ahead and completely remodel the piece that we just selected there so that it has a larger bevel present at the front. So that's what we're going to do right here. We're just going to increase the depth of the inset, and then I'll show you how we go ahead and remodel the extruded part of this. Personally, I just liked it with a bit of a bigger bevel at the front. I found from a greater distance it was easier to see, so that's why I went ahead and did it. If you like it with the smaller bevel at the front, by all means, it is your helmet, so you can go with the design choices you want at the end of the day. Here we're adding in these two loop cuts as we're going to start to add some indents into these little back extrusions here. Once again, we're going to be using shrink wrapping on these as well, as once we actually do the inward extrusion on these, you'll notice we get a whole lot of shading artifacts, and it's just not good for the model. So once again, we're going to be using our shrink wrap methods with vertex groups to go ahead and clean up all the shading. I feel like by this stage in the series, since we are almost at the end, I am guessing you guys are going to be very well versed with all of our shrink wrapping methods. Don't worry, we still have some more shrink wrapping to do later on in this tutorial as we start to do some insetting details at the base of the helmet as well. I'm not doing anything fancy in this part. I just go ahead and fill in these faces as I'm not happy with the size and length of this inset at the moment. So I just go and fill these faces in, delete everything behind it so that I can go ahead and adjust the size and width of this design that we've put in. You'll notice I have an issue with my shrink wrapping right here. The reason that happened is because the shrink wrap mesh doesn't actually have a mirror modifier applied to it. I don't know why I removed it in the beginning, but I did for some reason. Just don't do that because it just causes an unnecessary problem. Looks awful, and we just need to go ahead and quickly rectify that. So just don't remove the mirror modifier from the get-go, and you will avoid that horrible shrink wrapping error that I just caused myself. Just going to try and save you guys a bit of time and hassle here. We also want to select the other row of faces on the outside of this as well. So for all faces above and below this section we've just done. The reason being is that once we try to shrink wrap our mesh, we don't actually have enough data around the creased edges for it to properly shrink wrap to. So when we do it, and you'll notice because I keep it in here, it doesn't actually shrink wrap properly. So just make sure you go ahead and select the outer limits of the faces as well. I go ahead and do this in a bit, and then I adjust the vertex groups that we have on the helmet for the shrink wrap. Just wanted to try and save you guys a little bit of time and headache with trying to figure out why we have these problems occurring. So here we are, as I mentioned earlier, we just need to go ahead and select the extra row of faces on the outside. So I just go ahead, duplicate these, separate them by selection, and then add them into the shrink wrap mesh that we created earlier. So that's just me catching up to what I told you guys before, just to try and save you guys from only doing it now and having to work with the actual pinching errors that have been present on my end for the last little while now. So we just want to go ahead here and make a new collection, and this is going to be responsible for having our screw bits in it. So we just want to go ahead and load up our reference image, which we can find in our project folder, and we are going to model the Torx screw drive piece. And the reason I chose to do the Torx screw drive is because it's the same type of screw that are used in Xbox controllers, so I thought it'd be rather fitting that they are also used to keep the Chief's helmet all together. So you could use any type of screw bit that you'd want. I will be showing you how to model the Torx screw bit in this tutorial, however. We want to duplicate this screw piece here, and then select the original one, hit Ctrl L, and choose Object Data. This is going to be useful not so much in this tutorial, but in the next series where we do our UVing and texturing. The reason this is going to be helpful is because the base screw piece that we've kept, we're not going to modify, we're just going to leave it there, it will drive the UVs for all the other screw pieces that we place around the model, which is just going to be really helpful because then, should we need to, or however we want to do it, we could just layer all the UVs for these screw pieces on top of one another, as they are fairly minute and they really don't need all this individual texture detail to them. So it's just going to save us from having to individually unwrap all of the little screw pieces that we place around the helmet. So guys, we're almost at the end of the 19th tutorial here, and you should be very, very proud of what we have. Think back to where we started with doing the visor modeling and then blocking out all of the basic shapes and forms of the helmet. We've come a long way. We have something that looks really, really nicely detailed now, so you should be insanely proud of the progress we've made throughout this series. We have one more tutorial to go after this in episode 20, and it is a shorter episode. I believe it only goes for about 8 minutes, and what we do in those 8 minutes is just cut in a couple of minute details to the helmet that are present on our reference board. So look forward to that. That will completely round out this entire course. We already have a helmet that looks superb, but we're just going to go ahead and put in the finishing touches to everything. So I shall see you guys for the final tutorial to round out our Mark 6 Gen 3 modeling tutorial series.